All set, Emily?
Yep.
All right, here we go. Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Harville. I'm a natural resources specialist with the Tug Hill Commission. On behalf of the Tug Hill Commission, Region 6 of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and the Hamilton, Herkimer, Jefferson, and Lewis County Soil and Water Conservation Districts, we are pleased that you can join us for this virtual piece of the Black River Watershed Conference. This is the first of 7 webinars, which were originally planned for our in-person 10-year anniversary conference. We hope to hold the conference in person in 2021. The entire schedule of webinars is on the screen and is also available on the Commission's website at www.tughill.org. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the Commission's website. We'll take a break about halfway through the presentation and at the end to answer questions. You can use the Q&A function or the chat function, or just raise your hand. We ask that you keep your questions focused on the Black River Watershed. You're all muted right now to reduce background noise, but at designated times, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand. And again, we ask you to keep your comments and questions relevant to the topic. This afternoon's webinar is a summary of 10 years of progress in the Black River Watershed, which includes a multi-pronged approach to protect and improve the water quality, recreational opportunities, and communities along the Black River. The 2010 Black River Watershed Management Plan, the 2016 9-Element Plan, the 2007 Blue Way Trail Plan, and the 2012 Scenic Byway Corridor Management Plan all provide the foundation to advance existing efforts and new projects that enhance and improve all aspects of the Black River. I'd like to introduce you to Emily Sheridan. Emily is the Eastern Great Lakes Watershed Coordinator for DEC's Great Lakes Program and works in the Tug Hill Commission's office as a close partner. Emily coordinates the implementation of New York's Great Lakes Action Agenda within the Lake Ontario and St. Lawrence River watershed in collaboration with communities and organizations. There you go. Emily, I will stop sharing and take it away.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you so much for everyone who is tuned in today, and thank you to DEC and Tug Hill Commission and all of the partners that are supporting this watershed conference full of great information about the Black River Watershed. I am happy to present on the Black River Initiative progress report today that has advanced clean water initiatives as well as improved quality of life and recreation in the Black River Watershed. And a quick overview of what today's presentation will go over. I've planned on this presentation to be engaging, and we'll be asking questions throughout to provide opportunities to share your values, ideas, and feedback. Some outcomes I am anticipating from this discussion include additional engagement within the Black River Initiative, increased awareness about watershed management in general and Black River watershed management in particular, and renewed interest and capacity in working to implement the recommendations of the Black River Watershed Management Plan to sustain land and water resources in the region. And I'll start with an overview of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's Great Lakes Program. New York State DEC's Great Lakes Program mission is to protect, restore, conserve, and enhance the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of the waters and associated natural resources within the Great Lakes Basin for sustainable use and enjoyment by the people of New York. The program recognizes that New York's Great Lakes Basin covers 40% of the state, contains 250 species of fish, and more than 3.4 million people that live in the basin depend on its land and water resources, including drinking water from groundwater wells and surface water supplies like the Black River. Our mission is to ensure that people can continue to use and enjoy these important resources for generations to come. And we have an agenda to do good things in the watershed. We have 4 categories of goals that include cleaning up waters, conserving natural resources, promoting resiliency and sustainability, as well as cross-cutting priorities for science, monitoring, education, and climate change adaptation and mitigation. Our program and this agenda is supported by New York State's Environmental Protection Fund under Ocean and Great Lakes Ecosystem Conservation Act funding under Article 14 of the Environmental Conservation Law. The Black River Watershed is part of this Great Lakes Basin, and the recommendations for the Black River Watershed align with the goals of New York's Great Lakes Action Agenda. To learn more, visit our Great Lakes Action Agenda website, which you can find by searching DEC Great Lakes Action Agenda. In order to advance the goals of the Great Lakes Action Agenda, we apply an ecosystem-based management approach. And when I think of EBM, I think of this quote by John Muir, who once said that when one tugs at a single thing in nature, he finds it attached to the rest of the world. EBM recognizes the interconnectedness with people and their environment and promotes collaboration to achieve and sustain social, economic, and environmental goals through science-informed decision-making. Our DEC communications program helped us put together this infographic, and this is also available on our website. And diving right into the Black River Watershed, quick review if you haven't heard the word watershed before. A watershed is an area of land that drains to a common outlet, such as a stream, river, lake, or even an ocean. The Black River is a hydrologic unit code 8 boundary and drains 1.2 million acres within Jefferson, Lewis, Oneida, Herkimer, and Hamilton counties. It drains from the headwaters of the Western Adirondacks to Lake Ontario. And this watershed has been shaped by glaciation and erosive forces that have occurred throughout history. And its related drainage area is a result of the topography and geology of the region. More about the geology will be presented by Dr. Chris Eby on October 20th. As precipitation in the form of rain and snow fall in the headwaters, in the Western Adirondacks, which is 3,771 feet above sea level, these waters are carried by gravity through a network of rivers, streams, and groundwater aquifers and make their way to Lake Ontario. The region's climate is characterized by long, cold winters, short, cool summers, and has one of the highest precipitation rates in the state, from 34.7 inches in Watertown to 59.6 inches in Boudville. The early land inhabitants of the region were the Haudenosaunee, which is a European, and the European name for this is the Iroquois, which translates to people who build a house or people of the longhouse. Early land use in this region included hunting for beaver, deer, and wild turkey, fishing for salmon, bass, and whitefish, and gathering of maple syrup, berries, and nuts, as well as farming for corn, beans, and squash. The Haudenosaunee did not believe that land could be property and recognized the rights of all to utilize the lands in a way that respected Mother Earth. Early French settlers, they made purchases of the lands beginning in the 1700s, and they were attracted by the abundant water, the potential for hydropower, and the forest resources in the area that could be made into different wood product supplies. More on the history of the region will be presented on October 13th by Dr. Lori Rush and Peter Hayes, so please stay tuned for that one. The watershed is characterized as being in good condition overall, according to the Bergman and Associates characterization report that was done in 2010, with 60% of the watershed's land uses being wild conservation forests and parks that are mostly within the Adirondack Park boundary. Other land uses, such as residential, cover 15.2% of the watershed, and agricultural is 14.1%. With much of the agricultural land use being in the rich, fertile Black River Valley region near the main stem. While the watershed is characterized overall as good, I think it's important to note that some sub-watersheds or smaller drainage areas have documented water quality and land use issues. Now for some fun. Remember places? The Black River has lots of great places, and we'd like you to see if you can guess what these places are, and I will share some fun facts. So please use the comment box to try and guess what the places are. I'll give you a multiple choice. Do we have any guesses? Any guesses on where this place is?
Here it is.
All right. Looks like we had Tom Voss and Andrea Pedrick and Haley Sylvan. They all had the answers right. The answer is, of course, Dexter. And Dexter is located where the Black River meets Lake Ontario. It is a small community of about 1,100 people, and it's named after a village stockholder and New York State politician named Simon Newton Dexter. There is a hydroelectric dam in Dexter called Dexter Falls, which is the first barrier to fish entering the Black River. And fish ladders were installed here to improve passage. This is a very popular angling location for salmon, steelhead, and trout. Next place. All right, we've got some guesses coming in. It's like Diedrich Town Jr. said B, Mark Green, Les Rasegi. Did I say that right? All right, everyone who had B, you had it correct. This is located in Watertown. And some fun facts about Watertown. It was first explored by French surveyor Pierre Ferreau in 1799, who charted boundaries of land claims for French aristocrats, and he drowned, sadly, at the base of the 20-foot high Great Falls while surveying. The Black River plunges 500 vertical feet through a 10-mile stretch at Watertown, and many dams were built within the limestone gorge in the area with an abundance of cheap natural power that drew settlers here. In the 19th century, the paper industry took off and declined when wood supplies from the Adirondacks were diminished. This photo, interestingly, shows shelf ice that is created when dams change water levels quickly and the sheets of ice cling to the trees. All right, I know this one's really hard, but can you name this place in the watershed? Happens to be one of my favorites. All right, looks like we had Emily Columbus, Angie Kimball, John Fox, Diedrich Town Jr. All said the correct answer being Stillwater. And Stillwater Reservoir is a 6,700 acre man-made lake in the town of Webb in the Beaver River. Damming was completed in 1925 by the state to provide a constant flow for industrial needs downriver. The state purchased 75,000 acres, some that were flooded, at a price of $600,000, which was a lot back then. That would be like $18,564,000 today. The reservoir was home to one of the largest populations of common loons, and it's part of the Five Ponds Wilderness area with primitive camping allowed on the islands and other recreational opportunities that include boating, fishing, hunting, snowmobiling, and cross-country skiing. And last one, can you name this place in the watershed? All right, looks like we had John Wiley, Angie Kimball, Haley Sullivan, John Fox, Emily Columbus, Mark Green, Diedrich Town Jr. all had it right. Lyons Falls is the correct answer. And Lyons Falls is named for 1823 settler Caleb Lyon, who worked to build a bridge over the Black River and Moose River. Lyons Falls was originally used as a grist mill in the early 1890s. An entrepreneur purchased the property and constructed a paper mill, an important asset to the village, which closed after a century of paper making in 2000. Many people in the area were employed by the mill, and the loss of a major employer caused businesses to close and people to relocate. In 2011, Lyons Falls was designated as a brownfield opportunity area, with cleanup and restoration underway since 2014, anticipated to be completed this year, with over $1.5 million in state and federal funding and support from many partners like the Development Authority of the North Country. And now, to set the stage for the Black River Initiative, I would like to share a story. And the story is about my love of hiking and a personal goal that I have to hike all of the peaks in the headwaters of New York's Great Lakes. I love to be able to reach these summits and look over the landscape and think about everything that's going on in these watersheds as I'm looking across. I've hiked Bald Mountain a lot with many friends and their kids because it's a very easy hike. And I really enjoy helping their kids learn as they hike. It actually used to be my job as an environmental educator to teach kids about their environment and the feeling of accomplishment when we reach the summits together. The goals of the Black River Initiative to me are kind of like summits that we can reach together, and the projects are the steps that we take towards achieving the shared goal of keeping everyone safe and reaching these goals together and sustaining our land and water resources. And for bonus points, can anyone tell me what Black River Watershed waterway this summit overlooks? Go ahead and use the chat box. All right, looks like we had Moose River. We had someone say Fourth Lake. So the correct answer is either B or D. The Fulton chain of lakes is in the headwaters of the Moose River. And I'd like everyone to participate in a poll to get a sense of what you love about this watershed. There's lots of things to love about it. Can we pull that? Is that up there?
The poll is on the screen.
Okay, great. So we'll take a minute or two to give people a chance to answer. We've got 27 of 49 people that voted. All right. So it looks like we had 3% of folks say swimming, and 34% said boating and fishing. 3% said drinking water, 3% agricultural production, and 55% of people said all of the above. So that's great. Thank you so much. And that information will be included in the final Black River Initiative progress report. So thank you for sharing. See if I can close. And this is a lovely picture of my friend's kids at another part of Stillwater Reservoir, but a really nice part where you can boat out to the islands. All right, threats to uses in these watersheds. So all of those uses that 55% of you cared about. Some of the threats include urban stormwater runoff, agricultural runoff, legacy contaminants, chemicals of emerging concern like perfluorooctanoic acids, invasive species, wastewater and on-site septic system discharges, hydro modifications, severe storms, flooding, and climate change. And this is a photo that Michelle Swisher shared from Lewis County Soil and Water Conservation District of a flooded road in the Black River Watershed. With excess precipitation and severe storm events that can damage critical infrastructure and private property, this high water and river flow event in the Black River Village portrays, or in Lewis County portrays impacts of high waters to travel and road infrastructure. So the Black River Initiative Progress Report from 2010 through 2020, this was developed in coordination with a number of different partners that are highlighted in the report, including the Tug Hill Commission, the Lewis and Jefferson County Soil and Water Conservation Districts, DEC Division of Water and Great Lakes Program staff, as well as multiple other partners that contributed to implementing projects within the watershed plan. We are fortunate that in the Black River Watershed, many of the threats are well understood and partners are actively managing them to sustain land and water uses. The Black River Initiative Progress Report details this progress, and this report has been a labor of love. I have really enjoyed compiling lists of all the great projects and organizing in a way that will help everyone involved look at this big picture and their role in it. But if there are projects that we may have missed, please let us know and we will include them in the final report. And Black River Watershed Management Plan implementation by the numbers to give you a big picture view. And this aerial photo was taken by Mickey Diedrich at the Tug Hill Commission. Based on our evaluation, there have been 72 actions totaling $35,812,470 in funding, including projects and ongoing initiatives that have been underway or completed. And this report is, it will go into detail on some of these 72 actions that have been supported, but for any additional information, we encourage you to review the progress report on the Tug Hill Commission website. And this map just kind of gives a brief overview of where many of these projects have occurred. The red shows where there have been remediation projects. The orange shows where agricultural best management practices have been implemented. Brown are wastewater treatment improvement projects. The green is restoration and green infrastructure projects. And the black, it's kind of a blackish blue, but the black shows recreation access and community renewal projects. Some of the gaps that we're seeing in sort of Herkimer County and some of these headwater areas could partly be because these are protected areas that you know, need sort of minimal watershed management actions. It could also be a gap in partnerships and capacity. And could also help us to see where additional actions might be needed. But there's a lot of protection within the Adirondack Park boundaries by the Adirondack Park Agency as well. Now, getting into the nitty-gritty weeds of it all, plan and implementation by the number, I'm going to share some examples by each of the recommended actions within the Department of State Watershed Management Plan on plan implementation by the numbers. And after we go through the by the numbers, we'll have some discussion of these accomplishments and a little bit of a break. But getting into the first one is Inter-Municipal Coordination. There have been at least 7 actions to encourage communication and coordination, including the Jefferson County Stormwater Coalition that was established in 2014 to meet new permitting requirements for urbanized areas under the Municipal Separate Stormwater Sewage System Program. And the 8 municipalities and Jefferson County Soil and Water Conservation District developed a website called jcnystormwater.com for more information. And in May of 2010, 14 towns and 11 villages spanning the 5 counties within the Black River Watershed signed an Inter-Municipal Coordinating Organization Memorandum of Understanding, agreeing to coordinate to implement recommendations of the Black River Watershed Management Plan within their communities. These include Lewis County, Oneida County, and Jefferson County, Lewis and Herkimer counties as well. For the second one, working with landowners, farmers, and communities to implement water quality best management practices, there have been at least 23 actions totaling $14,603,102 in funding, including the Black River Trash Bash, which has engaged over 400 volunteers and cleaned up over 5,000 pounds of trash along Black River shorelines, water quality improvement projects, and wastewater treatment improvement grants totaling over $12 million, and Lewis County agricultural best management practices totaling over $3 million. The third, providing technical expertise to communities and municipalities to ensure conservation practices are implemented, includes the Tug Hill Commission's annual local government conference, sediment and erosion control training offered by Jefferson County Soil and Water Conservation District, and floodplain management trainings that were offered by DEC in 2017 and the Association of State Floodplain Managers offering floodplain management trainings throughout the state. And looking at the conditions, I've got to admit it's getting better. When you compare the conditions from the 2014 water body inventory priority water bodies list for the Black River Basin to today's more recent rotating intensive basin studies biomonitoring results, you can see where conditions have been improving, such as in Kelsey Creek, Swiss Creek, and Mill Creek, where you see that the yellow, which is an indicator of minor impairments based on this biological assessment profile score, and that used to be, you know, an impaired segment based on this 2004 inventory. So you can see where some of these conditions have already started to improve as a result of the watershed management plan implementation. For 4, building on educational programs to increase awareness of water quality issues in the watershed, there have been 4 different actions, including the Jefferson Community College's Earth Week, held every year to educate students and residents in the Watertown and other areas. And the New York State DEC's Great Lakes program has a Great Lakes Ecosystem Education Exchange, which provides resources and other materials for teachers in the watershed, and they've held workshops where Watertown and Carthage and other area teachers have attended to learn about Great Lakes literacy and stewardship that they brought back to their classrooms. For 5, continuing to monitor and eradicate invasive species, the St. Lawrence Eastern Lake Ontario Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management, or SLELO-PRISM, has and partners have included the Tug Hill Commission, and they educate and engage communities and the public in watershed and monitoring and managing invasive species. And they've identified and implemented control practices such as purple loosestrife biocontrol in Lewis County, giant hogweed control in various areas. And this image here shows a boat launch stewardship program that has been expanded in the watershed in recent years, with some new boat launch stewards educating boaters as they're entering a waterway in the upper headwaters as well as Dexter area. For 6, maintaining on-site septic systems, the Fulton Chain of Lakes Association has advanced a strategy to reduce septic loading that included outreach to waterfront homeowners, septic inspections, and voluntary repair and replacements. And they had also worked with the town of Webb to update zoning to require septic maintenance and replacements that protect drinking water sources and recreational waterways. And to learn more about that effort, I would encourage you to visit the Fulton Chain of Lakes Association.org. To restore and maintain riparian buffers, there have been at least 2 projects including one under the U.S. Forest Service Great Lakes Restoration Initiative grant in 2015 to plant trees and install rain gardens in the lower Black River watershed. For keeping new development out of floodplains, the Lewis County Soil and Water Conservation District installed stream gauges, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency and Jefferson County floodplain mapping has been a little bit updated, as well as DEC has held floodplain management trainings in 2017. For number 9, minimize impervious surface cover, Lewis County Soil and Water Conservation District and Jefferson Community College were awarded grants from the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation to install porous pavement in place of impervious concrete pavement. Additional information about these projects is included in the report, but there has been at least 3 projects that have been completed or underway, totaling $2,270,000. And this image shows a green infrastructure area at the Lewis County Administration Building, and this picture was taken by Frank Pace. For number 10, incorporating effective stormwater and erosion control practices, the Watertown and surrounding communities were able to apply to a DEC Water Quality Improvement Project grant to complete a stormwater management plan and do outfall mapping throughout the lower Black River watershed. For number 11, minimizing forest fragmentation and encouraging forest easements, the Wildlife Conservation Society and the Nature Conservancy are advancing land conservation within the Tug Hill Adirondack Connectivity Corridor. And in 2018, the Nature Conservancy was awarded $537,000 and $543 for Black River Valley source water protection land acquisitions. And there's more information on this on their stayingconnectedinitiative.org website. And also the Tug Hill Tomorrow land acquisitions in the watershed have totaled over 6,512 acres. For number 12, enhancing recreational opportunities and quality of life in the watershed, the Village of Dexter Bridge Replacement, Watertown Downtown Revitalization Initiative, and the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation Black River Trail Extensions have all contributed towards achieving this goal. And there's been a total of 10 projects with over $17 million awarded. And with that, I would like to open this up for discussion, and I'd like to share this quote that I hope will kind of help inspire some of this discussion. This is a photo of Mosier Reservoir, and the quote is from John Dewey, and Dewey was a famous educator and philosopher who founded modern pragmatism. And he said, "We do not learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience." Pragmatism has to do with whether or not an approach is practical to dealing with problems and affairs. And so what I want us to think about in relation to this quote is the plan for sustaining the Black River watershed practical. Is it achievable? And please use the comment box to share your thoughts on the process, accomplishments, and challenges for implementing this plan. And Jen, if you'd like to say anything else for moderating this discussion, please do so.
Sure, you can feel free to use the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, I can give you speaking privileges too. Not seeing any questions. Oh, here we go. All right, John Wiley had a question for us. That's a great question. Are there any plans to update the plan in the next 5 years? I will take a stab at that, John. It is on our wish list, yes, to update the plan and to, you know, in my view, this is Jennifer speaking, by the way. In my view, in an ideal world, we'd have a plan that compiled both the Black River Watershed Management Plan and the 9-element plan into one. and that took it to the 12-digit HUC, in case anybody is listening on the funding side. Okay. Paul Harris, what are some of the biggest obstacles that still need to be addressed? And I neglected to say in the beginning, we have Nichelle Swisher from the Lewis County Soil and Water Conservation District on the phone, or on the webinar. And I would invite her to chime into any of these too.
Thank you, Jen.
Sure. Does anybody want to answer Paul? What are some of the biggest obstacles that still need to be addressed?
That's a good question, and I think we will be getting a little bit more into that in the second part of this presentation. So I think I kind of want to hold on to that thought until towards the end to kind of think about some of the other recommendations that we'll be sharing in the second part.
Hi, Patricia. She says adaptation to climate change. I think that is part question and part answer, but I would, yeah, huge obstacle there.
And I think it's, this is Nichelle, this is integral, and, you know, all of our implementation projects and even in our communities and our building, I think climate change is obvious to us up in the North Country, and it definitely affects the Black River watershed.
Okay. Larry Sorrell says there are a couple points talked about that we would like to participate in, and what's the methodology to do so. And I think Emily's smiling. She's going to get to that in just a few minutes. Let's see.
Yeah, I think Tom, we'll cover that later.
And you can see that Tom also chimed in, Tom Voss, right sizing culverts, the NAC stuff, Lewis County and others have been doing some more great, lots of work to be done there. There's certainly doable work.
I do believe the Nature Conservancy, or is it Trail Unlimited, that's actually holding a training coming up soon on right sizing culverts.
Great. All right, so if we are ready to continue, Emily, I would say that's what we have for now.
All right, great. Was there any other thoughts on the accomplishments? I did have a quick poll.
Oh.
And let's see if I can pull that up. How do I, second poll? Is that how I do it? Launch, okay.
There you go.
So my poll question, if you were to give this initiative a grade, quote unquote, on how we are doing, what would it be? A+, excellent work, B, good job, C, needs work, or D-, see me? If the answer is see me, please feel free to share your contact information in the chat box and we'll get in touch with you and see you. Right, looks like we're up to 16 people participating in the poll. And I'm going to make a note of the results for the final Black River report. So please feel free to share your grading of this initiative. Give it maybe just another, give it till the timer hits 2 minutes to give a few more folks a chance to answer.
In the meantime, we have 30 seconds. John Wiley asks, are there any thoughts on including water quantity with the water quality?
Water quantity. Well, I think that's certainly a good question, and you know, certainly we have the DEC Water Resources Law and the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Water Resources Compact that covers water withdrawals and seeks to determine our water budget as well. This is an important goal of our Great Lakes Action Agenda. I would also defer to my to our DEC Regional Permit Administrator if he has any more that he would like to add to that question of water quantity within the watershed. Tom, do you have any more to add?
I'm gonna try to get him unmuted. Let's see.
While you're unmuting, Tom, I would add that the original watershed plan did include some groundwater assessment. We haven't really done a lot with that since then, as there hasn't been a perceived need to do that, but it's definitely, we have some groundwork in that assessment, and we could certainly build on that if there were specific needs identified that we could assist with.
And this is Tom Voss. I think that, given who is asking that question, John Wiley, I think that the hydros and the hydro relicensing that we're about to embark upon this will be a very relevant topic for that as we look at some of these, the operation of these hydros and their effects on water quantity, stream flows, run of river versus peaking. I think that's going to be a important consideration as part of these hydro relicensing. So that would be one of the water quantity and water quality intersections.
Thank you, Tom. That's a very good point, and also, with increasing drought, that's certainly something that we need to be aware of and prepared, to advance conservation measures given some of those emerging issues. So thank you. And with the polling results, it looks like we had 12 people at 50% say that we're doing excellent work, and another 12 at 50% said that we are doing a good job. So thank you very much for sharing your feedback, and we'll consider that in our final report as well. Thank you. Moving into some of the additional recommendations for this watershed management plan, that where there are some gaps in advancing some of these recommendations, or some kind of emerging things that we've learned that have been identified by various stakeholders. I wanted to point out some of these recommendations, but there are many more that are included in the Black River Initiative Progress Report that you can take a look at and consider. I just wanted to kind of highlight maybe 5 of the top ones that seem to have come up in many of my discussions with different stakeholders. One of them being having a dedicated Black River Watershed Coordinator that can advance projects. Either a dedicated coordinator or very ambitious local champions are needed to help connect communities with local watershed management needs, identify and scope out projects, apply for and administer project funding, and continue to track the progress of implementation. I have been able to support some of this, but I cannot focus on the Black River Watershed. I have the St. Lawrence Watershed and the Finger Lakes and Lake Ontario. So my time is kind of split between trying to help people and address issues in these various areas and track what's going on. So it would be beneficial to have sort of one person that can focus on that. Another recommendation where we have septic density being very high, like in the map here. This is a map from Department of State where the brown shows where septic density is greater than 50% per square mile. And so some different strategies to address potential septic runoff could be considering installing sewer systems, as well as septic outreach strategies, providing funding for septic replacements, or providing other incentives or recognition for folks that decide to voluntarily improve their septic system to reduce any kind of runoff. Another recommendation that has come up, and we'll talk more about that in the next slide, but enhancing severe barriers to aquatic fish passage is an additional need. Watershed modeling and prioritization at the HUC 12 scale, we'll talk about that in an upcoming slide as well. And using the Black River 9 element plan to apply to federal funding, and we'll talk about some of the challenges associated with that and the needs for that in the coming slides too. So the first that I wanted to talk about is the barriers to fish passage. And this map is taken from the www.streamcontinuity.org. So this is the North Atlantic Aquatic Connectivity Collaborative protocols and database for assessing road stream crossings or culverts for barriers to aquatic organism passage, as well as also looking at conditions and resiliency to flooding. So this shows, these numbers show the number of assessments that have been done on this larger map. And then as you zoom in, it will show you the results of the culvert assessments. And when you click on one of these icons, it will display photos of the culvert as well as associated data like the width and the height and the bank full width and other details that can be used if you're trying to apply for road infrastructure improvement projects, or this could also be used to apply to Fish and Wildlife Service grants for improving fish passage, or the DEC's Water Quality Improvement Project Aquatic Habitat Restoration grants as well. So this is good information that can help enhance some of these different barriers to fish passage. The watershed modeling and prioritization at the HUC 12 scale. One thing about the HUC 12 sub-watershed boundaries is that they are much more readily accessible than these HUC 11 legacy boundaries that we'll talk a little bit more about. This New York State Riparian Restoration Opportunity Assessment uses these HUC 12 boundaries, as you can see on this map. And it also has catchment maps, so even smaller drainage areas within these sub-watershed boundaries. And you can look at the indicators of each ecological health and stress. They're portrayed here as a comprehensive score, but you can look at each of these individual indicators. And some of the indicators are trout streams and water quality, forest cover, erosion risks. There's a lot of really great information within this riparian opportunity assessment, and it can be used if you're applying for funding or looking for issues within your community or subwatershed. And there's all of these boundaries and all of this data can be downloaded, and you can pull it into your favorite ArcGIS mapping platform as well. For the Black River 9 element plan that can be used to apply to federal funding, this was developed in 2016 to meet federal requirements for watershed plans and help us get funding for projects. The goals within this plan are, basically to reduce phosphorus, nitrogen, and sediment loading in the watershed. And the plan uses the priority HUC 11 watershed boundaries that were originally used in the DOS-funded watershed management plan to identify these priority areas. And these are shaded in, the priority subwatersheds are shaded in brown, and then the yellow are the medium priority subwatersheds, and then the green are low priority subwatersheds that can be protected. So getting into some of the 9 element plan implementation by the numbers, I'm evaluating them differently because there are some different ways that this plan evaluates outcomes within a watershed management plan. The 9 element plan seeks to measure qualitative and quantitative outcomes from the implementation of best management practices. An example of a qualitative outcome would be improved water quality, meeting you know, drinking water or fishing or aquatic life or swimming criteria. Meeting those beneficial uses would be a qualitative measure, and meeting Clean Water Act requirements as well. Metrics like the gallons of runoff that are intercepted and the pounds of nutrient load reductions would be a quantitative outcome to be measured. And the Black River 9 element plan uses both of these metrics to evaluate success. So diving into the numbers, within implementing agricultural best management practices, there's been 29 projects that have totaled 36,646,000. I think that's supposed to say 3 million. I'm sorry. It should be $3,646,290. And one of the practices that I was able to sort of quantify how many acres they have occurred on was for cover crops. And using that acreage, I was able to evaluate the reduced phosphorus, nitrogen, and nitrogen loading. So the phosphorus was reduced by 181 pounds, and the N loading was reduced by 19,026 pounds based on the metrics that are used to determine the ad load reductions that are in the Black River 9 element plan. This is more information on that is in the Black River Initiative Progress Report. For restoring riparian buffers, there was one project in Forestport where 1,350 gallons of runoff were intercepted annually. And for wastewater treatment improvements, there have been 8 projects totaling $12,413,132 to help meet regulations. And the EPA keeps track of whether or not a wastewater treatment facility meets those regulations, and that information is available on their ECHO website. For on-site septic repair and replacement, there have been 2 actions with the Fulton chain of lakes now under swimming threshold for coliform counts being a qualitative metric that was met. And for green infrastructure to improve stormwater management, there have been 4 projects that have intercepted 298,222 gallons of runoff with $2,270,000 in funding. Now, for some of the challenges with the 9 element plan implementation, I pulled up this HUC 12 map again, but there is some limited accuracy for determining if projects are within the priority HUC 11, because these maps are not readily accessible that we can plug into a GIS mapping application. It's hard to say, and I'll give an example. I remember when we were planning a Black River Watershed Conference, we considered having the conference at the Best Western. And we thought, oh, the Best Western, it's within the Black River Watershed. You know, it's right in Watertown. It's, you know, it has to be there. So, and we were also considering the Hilton over on Arsenal Street. And we thought that was in the watershed as well. So when we actually took the coordinates and mapped them and put the watershed boundary around these areas, it turned out that the Best Western was outside of, or the Hilton was outside of the Black River watershed. It was actually within the Mill Creek watershed. So, you know, being able to overlay that watershed boundary map with where the project is really helps to determine if it is within that area where you're interested. So if we don't have a HUC 11 boundary to overlay, we can't determine with accuracy that that project occurred within that priority subwatershed. For tracking metrics such as acres and square feet of a project and the number of trees planted to quantify nutrient loads, we need you know, more attention and more sharing of this type of information to be able to track these quantitative outcomes. For stormwater management projects within the 9E plan, we had using the it was something like 0.01 kilograms per acre of a runoff for 1 acre. So it was very minimal, the amount of phosphorus and nutrient load reduction that you achieved from doing a green infrastructure project. But there were also a number of gallons of runoff that's being reduced, which helps reduce the pressure on the wastewater treatment plant to treat that stormwater, and it reduces the amount of other pollutant loading getting into a waterway. So there were benefits beyond just nutrient load reduction that evaluating the gallons of runoff reduced would better track. And then for agricultural best management practices, these locations, they're typically kept confidential, and the soil and water districts, they keep this information confidential to maintain the trust of landowners. But it would be helpful to have this information voluntarily shared to help with tracking the management within these watershed boundaries, if not for the exact location, just whether or not it's occurring within a priority area would be beneficial information to have. So considering some of the recommendations I've gone over, and if you've looked over the progress report that has some additional recommendations, just thinking from your perspective or your experience or from what you understand, what are some of the additional actions you would like to see advanced in the watershed within the next 5 to 10 years? And feel free to plug that into the chat box, and we can get into some of the questions as well. Jen, if you'd like to say anything else to moderate.
Sure. Patricia looks like Patricia Schulenberg would like to see more riparian buffer projects. Yeah, let's see if anybody would like to raise their hand or speak, just let me know.
For the more riparian buffer projects, there's a great example. What they've done in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, they applied to, I think it was like a Healthy Waters Future grant, but they got federal funding and they hired 2 stewardship coordinators. And these stewardship coordinators actively, engaged communities, and they engaged private property owners, and they identified projects where riparian buffers could be implemented, and they actually kind of went in and did a lot of the work to install riparian buffers at these different sites, and then they worked with the property owners to help with maintenance as well. So I think that's a really good one really great strategy of how they were able to advance riparian buffers in another watershed.
Thanks, Emily. Who else has some questions or comments?
Jen, while we're waiting, this is Nichelle. That's something that we definitely, want to look into more. As John Wiley had said, looking at water quantity and water quality. Our Department of State grant was originally, the watershed management plan was strictly water quality based. So like Katie had said, we added the groundwater assessment, but looking at these dams that are relicensing and climate change, a real evaluation on water quantity in the watershed is, I think, key, as well as looking at some of the land use and people coming, land use regulation and floodplains where building permits are being provided in floodplains, those kind of things. Those are all considerations, I think, that needed to be incorporated into this new plan when we get there.
Okay, I have there's a question in the chat box here. Has an assessment been performed in the watershed to determine if there are old or abandoned dams which could be removed to improve environmental health? And I would say the short answer is yes. We know they're there. And we know there's a lot of work needs to be done in sort of studying and looking at permitting requirements to actually make some of that happen. Nichelle and I got up close and personal with some of the old Black River Canal remnants between Lyons Falls and
Bush's
Lowville.
Landing. Yeah.
Yeah, just above Lowville. So we know they're there.
And that's just the main stem. I'm sure there's some in some of the tribs that could be looked at. I know for years ago, we worked on a Sears Pond project that, well, that ended up not going anywhere, and that dam is pretty much taking care of itself, I think, with nature, but there may be other small, you know, historical dams that may not be serving a purpose any longer that could be looked at. But so it's a good question. I don't think we've done a real detailed look at it. It certainly has come up in certain projects.
Yeah.
I think we were also dealing with an issue of, you know, when we were talking about potentially removing the Otter Creek or notching the Otter Creek Dam, there's been no sediment testing. And I think that was a concern in the removal of dams. So, you know, what funding source would you go for if you were to remove that dam to actually, you know, do the perhaps toxicity testing on the sediment?
I would add that, you know, DEC, we have this new resource called the DEC Info Locator, and it does map out all of the dams throughout the state, and it does identify the hazard class of each of these dams. You know, so how, you know, what potential it has to damage infrastructure or flood or impact communities, that that hazard classification is given. So I would encourage you to look at that DEC Info Locator for more information on dams, as well as connect with DEC's dam safety program to find out more. I would also say, Tom, do you have anything to add about dam removals or abandoned dams in the watershed?
Thank you, Emily. A lot of times they're abandoned. We don't have an owner of record or a viable owner of record for a lot of these the old structures, as we found with even in the Black River main stem. So the investigation of funding sources, there are a plethora of opportunities out there, but it's finding the right one that will provide us with that funding source to be able to progress these projects.
I can break in just for a second, just to introduce Katie and Tom. Katie, Tom, and Nichelle were the original sort of project advisory committee members 10 years ago when the Black River Watershed Management Plan started. So Katie is the executive director of the Kentucky Commission, and Tom is the regional permits administrator for DEC Region 6. So thank you both for helping us today.
Thanks, Jen. You're dating us.
Yeah, I was there too. Anything else? Q&As or chats? Anybody would like to talk? I have a burning question that you need to have answered. Okay.
Well, if you can't think of anything right this second, and you do get a chance to breeze through the 26-page Black River Initiative Progress Report, feel free to get a hold of us and let us know what additional actions you would like to see advanced. And I, wouldn't be with the Great Lakes program if I didn't talk about the different funding opportunities to implement some of these different projects. There are many grants available. For example, the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets, they have 2 grants that are currently open. One is for the Riparian Buffer for Source Water Protection and Climate Resiliency Training grants. And if you are interested in those, I would encourage you to contact your county soil and water conservation district and partner with them. The USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service provides funding for conservation reserve enhancement projects and environmental quality improvement projects. And they also, the USDA also has rural development grants that will cover different things like improving infrastructure, wastewater, water infrastructure improvements, and other improvements to quality of life within a community. The U.S. Department of Homes and Community Renewal also funds wastewater treatment improvements. In some cases, they'll provide homeowner grants. They'll do septic improvements for low-income families that need to make improvements to their home. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, as well as the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, has funding for hazard mitigation, planning and implementation, as well as disaster assistance, like with the disaster declaration for last year's Halloween storm. I understand there's been a number of projects underway. The Great Lakes Restoration Initiative has various funding pots for their 5 focus areas that include toxics, invasive species, non-point source pollution and runoff reductions, habitats and species, and foundations for future restoration actions that include things like research and education, especially for K through 12 students, to support the next generation of stewards. As well as the consolidated funding application, and you know, that's kind of an unknown for this year, and I know we missed the deadline, or it didn't open up this year, and there's some uncertainty around it. If anybody else has any other updates beyond that, feel free to share. But this is a process and a gateway for applying for a variety of state grants that are available to implement recommendations in the plan, including DEC grants for water quality improvement projects and climate smart communities grants for climate change adaptation and mitigation. The New York State Department of State has grants for waterfront revitalization and brownfield opportunity area projects. And there are community development block grants to repair and replace infrastructure, improve facades, and assist low-income families with home repairs. The New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation grants provide funding to improve, replace, or install drinking water and wastewater infrastructure. They have an engineering grant to support design and feasibility studies. And they also have, well, it's not eligible in this sub-watershed, but in some watersheds, they have a septic replacement grant. And the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation has grants for parks and historic preservation, including park stewardship and maintenance and land acquisitions. So the staff at Tug Hill Commission are happy to help with applying for any of these grants. We even have a staff person here that is widely known as the grants lady, and you know, as well as myself with the Great Lakes program, we're really happy to help identify and apply for many of these grant programs. So if you have a project that you're interested in, please feel free to connect with us, and we will help in any way we can. And we did have a question about getting involved. And so one of the things I see coming out of this presentation is for more involvement in this initiative, more people either willing to participate in monitoring, or the trash bash, or a planning committee with implementing projects. Or, you know, just people that want to stay tuned and stay updated, whether by receiving our newsletter or staying in touch with our conference. But we developed this survey, and you can use your phone to access this QR code. And just by taking a picture, it should come right up. So feel free to share your thoughts and how you would like to be involved through this survey, and we'll get in touch with everyone, and we'll also include the summary of this information, not your contact or anything, but the summary of the information that we get from this survey will be included in the final Black River Initiative progress report. So that will kind of help us determine what the majority of folks are really interested in. So we would like to understand that as well. So I'll give you a minute to scan that code. This is a lovely picture of last year's Lewis County Soil and Water, or Lewis County Water Quality Coordinating Committee Trash Bash. Not sure if I have it in my notes how much trash we picked up. And I did want to share, in hopes that it might help inspire, I was looking into some of the spirituality of the Native Americans, the Haudenosaunee, and they believed in something called Olenta. And this Olenta is a magical potence that is found in people and their environment. This spiritual force flows through all things, and they believed if people were respectful of nature, then the spiritual force would be harnessed to bring about positive results. And I hope this belief, this message might inspire actions in the watershed that can bring about positive results. And with that, I would like to advance. If you have any other questions, please let me know. Feel free to get in touch with me. This is my office number. I check my messages when I'm not in the office and I'm working at home. So if you can't reach me here, feel free to leave a message, and feel free to email me with any additional questions as well. If you have any right now that we can answer, I think we can wrap this up a little bit early. But I hope, yep, Jen?
I was just saying, great job. Anybody have any follow-up for Emily? I'd just like to say thank you to Emily for that most excellent summary of all the work that has been done in the Black River Watershed over the last 10 years. And thank you for always looking for opportunities to move this important work forward, and for keeping your partners engaged. And your passion for our shared natural resources is admirable and shows through in all that you do. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emily and Jen.
And Michelle and Katie and Tom.
Thank you again for everyone that tuned in. Thank you to the Tug Hill Commission and DEC and all the partners for everything that you do, for the opportunity to share this with everyone, and everyone for joining. And thank you in advance for all the people that decide to get involved as a result of this presentation.
Great.
Thanks. If there are no other questions, I think that's all I have. I think we have one from John Wiley.
Yeah, John was wondering about dusting off the Blue Way Trail signage and signage recommendations, and I think we definitely have some ideas for some signage for sure. Thank you.
And Jen, we've actually met, in terms of Lewis County, we have, prior to COVID, we met with, well, it was Ryan Pichet and Jackie Mahoney, and who else did we meet with? To talk about maybe signage for recreation, for boat launches, how many miles from this boat launch to the next boat launch, and historical, for example, maybe the Wilsley Bridge on the Black River. It's, the abutment's still there, but the bridge is no longer there. Just little points of interest along the river that could provide information to even the locals that don't know.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you,
everyone.
ladies. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, and we can follow up on that survey and Emily's contact information, and remember the upcoming webinars too. We can send that information to you as well. Thank you.
This is a picture of the drinking water plant in Watertown, and I think just as a reminder, everything we do really helps to protect these important surface waters that we all rely on for drinking.
All righty. Take care, everyone.